What's going on, everybody? My name is Bendy, and this is Disney Heroes. So today we're going to be talking about Ian. I actually haven't seen Onward yet, so I kind of wanted to check out a trailer really quick just to get a feel for what the Onward movie's about, who I'm talking about, maybe get some clips for later in this video. So let's take a look. Oh, here we go. Well, this is very suspenseful. I wasn't expecting this for a Disney movie. Huh. This is what Pixar is doing in 2020? Doesn't look very good. What the hell?
I see one or two behind the chopper, about 50 meters back.
Oh, what the hell? Ian's killing people? Bro, what are you doing, Ian? So my sources tell me that was the wrong Onward. So I'm just going to pull up what I think is the correct one and put it in the background while I do the rest of this intro. Ian is, of course, the now infamous hero of I was about to say Overwatch, of Disney Heroes. He's quickly become probably the strongest hero in the entire game right now, and I know a lot of people definitely struggle with killing him. So today I kind of wanted to give you guys a hand and give you some ideas for how you can deal with Ian, because as you probably know by now, he's very annoying to deal with, and he'll just completely destroy your life if you're not prepared for him, with his absolutely ridiculous, fantastic damage, and his ability to reflect.
Yeah, but just keep going! Don't look back! Just straight ahead!
You still got the rope, right?
Yeah, I got it!
You!
If you like what I'm doing with this channel and you want to see some more of these hero overviews, definitely let me know in the comments. Let me know who you want to see in the future for this. I'm going to be doing Fear next and probably Cheshire after that, but let me know who else you want me to do a hero overview of. Yeah, I'm going to keep this intro kind of short, so let's just start. So as usual, I'm just going to start by reading their skills and just kind of giving my initial thoughts on them. So, Ian's white skill. Ian casts at the closest enemies in an area, dealing a lot of damage per second and knocking them back every second for 5 seconds. Ian casts this spell 2 seconds longer each time he performs Valtar Thunderseer. That's funny to say. So this is definitely one of the main things that is just absolutely going to destroy you. It does fantastic damage, so you want to be aware of that. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. It's just the thing that he's best at. It's what absolutely destroys your team most of the time. Next, we have his green skill. Ian casts, dealing a lot of damage and blinding enemies for 15 seconds. Boombastia is the other ability that's just going to completely destroy you. He doesn't use it quite as often as his white skill. I don't know what the cooldown is off the top of my head or anything, since it doesn't say. But this is definitely just another really scary ability that Ian has. And yeah, that's about it. So, his blue skill.
Magnora, get you one! Harley, stop and get it!
It worked! The can is huge!
When Ian attempts to cast
Magnora, get you one!
on an ally but misfires, instead shrinking the closest enemy. Enemies shrunk by this spell have their max HP reduced by a lot, and their basic damage reduced by a lot, and their movement speed reduced by 75% for 12 seconds. Shrunk enemies are knocked back 100% further, and can only basic attack. So this one, it definitely can be pretty annoying, if anything, and if you wind up getting shrunk by him, you're probably just completely screwed for a little while. You're doing basically nothing for your team at that point. I don't really know how you can avoid this skill, but it's yet again just another scary ability that Ian has. And then last, his kind of other bread and butter, I guess, in a way. It's definitely what he's most known for. is his reflection spell. At the beginning of each wave, Ian applies Reflect to the furthest back ally, not enemy, including himself, for 5 seconds. Heroes with Reflect prevent 100% of the damage that they would take, and instead return that damage back at the enemy who dealt the damage. Reflected damage cannot be dodged. So, this is 100% the counter for Mulan, and her initial firework that goes off is great for that, and definitely just keeps your team safe. Well, not really your team, but whoever's in the back, it keeps them safe for the beginning of the fight so that they don't die instantly. Next, we have his red skill. When Ian or an ally with Reflect take damage, Ian gains 120 energy. So he's going to just be getting that white skill off even faster anytime his Reflect goes off. Ian also gains 3 stacks of Hardy each time he uses his white skill, so that's always good. If you don't know, Hardy stops a debuff from hitting him in this case. So that could be anything from like a freeze, an attack reduction, a stun, etc. There's a ton of things that Hardy can block. It blocks any kind of debuff from hitting them. And this has a chance, the Reflect energy boost has a chance to fail. So you can see he does a ton of damage. His reflection is a great counter for Mulan, or kind of just really Mulan, and I guess a few other people that probably target the back row, but Mulan is really the main thing that Ian is going to be countering with his reflect. Now, his friendship discs. We have his Merlin disc first. Over here we see that he gives himself skill power, nothing too crazy over here, but his star ability over here is when a blinded enemy basic attacks Ian or an ally and misses, Ian gains 20 energy. So this one can be good if you're going in with a full-on blind team. So that could be Ian, Mulan, Goofy, Donald has blind, Peter Pan. There's a few others, but if you're going in with a blind team, this one could be good. It's just going to make him get his white skill off even faster, and he already gets it off pretty fast, especially if you have his red skill. And then his Goliath disc, which is the one that I use. So he gives himself max HP, and he increases the damage that his reflected damage does. That was a lot of D's. And then his star ability over here is whenever an ally receives Reflect, Ian also receives Reflect that lasts 5 seconds. So it looks like Ian only actually gets Reflect right in the beginning of the fight. It doesn't repeat ever, but now that there is a few other heroes that actually have Reflect, this just becomes even better. So there's Darkwing Duck now that has Reflect. I think Calhoun does with her red skill. I can't remember. And then Ham has Reflect, and then I think there's one other that I can't remember off the top of my head. But if anybody else gets Reflect, you know that Ian is just going to get Reflect right along with them. But this is the one that I use. Both of his friend discs really are not super crazy good, but just the fact that his skills here are just absolutely insane, it kind of balances out, I think. Okay, so now that we know what Ian does, let's talk a little bit about who pairs good with Ian as a teammate. Honestly, pretty much everybody. Ian can just really go with literally anybody, and he'll do great. More specifically, he's going to do great with anybody who does fantastic damage, really. So that could be, say, Louie, it could be Cheshire, it could be Pooh, Tigger, really anybody that does fantastic damage is going to go great with Ian. Rapunzel's going to be great with Ian because of Hardy, the reality boost that she gives to her teammates. A blind team, as I kind of mentioned before, is going to be great with Ian because he blinds himself, especially if you have the Merlin disc equipped. You'll just be getting off his white skill even faster. So some blind people, like I said before, it's going to be Mulan, Goofy, Jafar, Powerline, which brings me into my next thing. Freeze is going to go good with Ian just because of the ridiculous stun that Freeze gives. Like, Freeze really just goes with everything, I think, because just literally stopping your enemy from moving or doing anything, it just messes your enemies up so much. And similar to Freeze, just any stun in general is going to go great with Ian, just so he can get off his skills even faster or easier without dealing with getting damage done to him. This is actually something that I just thought of the other day, but Megara actually goes pretty damn well with Ian. Since Megara stands behind Ian, Megara is going to get Ian's Reflect right at the beginning of the match. Any damage that the ally that she is linked to for the first 5 seconds of the fight is also going to get reflected back at them, because she takes 25% of the damage from the linked ally. So for example, we have Mulan here. She could be standing up front, being linked with Megara. Megara is going to be taking 25% of Mulan's damage herself. So in the beginning of the fight, while the reflect is active. In addition to any damage that Megara herself is taking, she will be reflecting 25% of the damage that Mulan is taking. So you could really just be reflecting even more damage at the enemy in the beginning of the fight when paired with Megara. It's a little bit out there of a combo, probably a little bit situational if anything, but it was just something I thought of yesterday, so I wanted to share. I know I mentioned Elastigirl a lot, but I kind of just like her myself, even though she's very frail. But Elastigirl is a pretty good combo with Ian because, as I feel like I say every video, Jack Dis reducing enemy reality, it can be ridiculous, so that's just going to be making Ian do a lot more damage. Tron is going to do great with Ian because he gives hardy, which means Ian's not going to be getting stunned or frozen or anything like that. Also, Tron's white skill is going to be removing any buffs that the enemies have in order to allow Ian to do just even more damage to them, because they're not going to have any like reality boost or defense boost or anything like that. So he's just going to be able to allow Ian to just do ridiculous amounts of damage. Another good combo that I just kind of realized, which I'm not 100% sure if it's a bug or if it's meant to be like this, but Kermit is going to go great with Ian because his duplicating skill over here, his white skill, is actually going to duplicate the reflect onto all of his teammates. So at the beginning of the fight, if you have Kermit and he's able to get his white skill off in the first couple seconds or whatever, the reflect from Ian is going to be duplicated onto everybody. So now any damage that you take on your entire team, since your entire team has reflect, is just going to go right back at them. So it's kind of an insane little combo. I don't know if it's intended to do this, and I guess we'll see when they eventually update Kermit again, because I think they're going to be updating him in the next couple days, or today, or whenever this video goes up. But also, Kermit is able to make the frontmost ally invincible for 8 seconds, and this also gets duplicated by his white skill. So Kermit also is able to make his entire team invincible for 10 seconds or more, basically, which is another just insane thing, and I don't know if it's intended to work like that, but that's how it works currently. Similar to my freeze little section here, Honey Lemon is going to go great with Ian because with her red skill, she deals 50% more damage to enemies that are blind or frozen. And if you have both Ian with a freeze team, she deals 200% more damage. So in combination with Ian, Honey Lemon can deal a buttload of damage to the enemy, which is even more scary just from the sheer fact that Ian just does an absurd amount of damage himself. So that could be a real powerhouse combo right there if you have the right setup. And then the last person I kind of wanted to mention was Jim. Jim, he's really just one of the best support heroes now ever since he came out. His energize ability, giving even more energy to his teammates, is amazing. The fact that he has blind from his little morph pie thing, whatever it is. He gives shield. Well, I guess that's not really going to go to Ian because Ian kind of stands in the back generally. But if you're not playing on auto, you can select Ian as who morph goes to. Alright, so that's just some heroes that go good with Ian. Like I said, Ian, he's amazing. He really can just go on any team. He's a real powerhouse on the battlefield in Disney Heroes, so you could really just slap him on any team and he'll do great. So now, who is Ian good against? Now, Ian, I'm pretty sure he was literally made to be a Mulan counter, as the reflect that he gives himself or the ally behind him for 5 seconds is literally just for the firework at the beginning of the Mulan battle. It bounces back at her and it could potentially kill the back row enemy team instead of you. So some other good people that Ian is good against are just normal damage dealers in general, because typically they don't have quite as much reality. So Ian's just going to be completely tearing through normal heroes. Yeah, I really don't have very much for this good against section. He's kind of just a total powerhouse. It's kind of tough to just say what he's good against because he's really just good against everything almost. So let's just move on to the last section here, who counters him. I got actually a pretty decent list, I think. Some are a little bit better of counters than others, but the first counter is, I think Silence is a great counter for Ian, because it's just going to stop him from using his skills. If you don't know what Silence does, it stops the hero from using any of their skills for however long the silence lasts. So some Silence heroes in this game are Angel, Megara has Silence, Tia is another big silencer. I think she actually has the best silence in the game, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure on that because I don't actually have her powered up. Sadness is a great counter for Ian. And then I don't have her powered up, but Disgust is probably the other best silencer in the game. She has like a 14-second silence, so for literally if she can silence Ian, he's going to be prevented from doing his white skill or any of his other skills for 14 seconds. It's just going to give you a huge opening to kill him before he's able to get all of his damage off against you. Now, this one might be a little bit surprising for you guys, because he's more of a physical hero, but there's kind of a specific reason that I think he's a pretty good counter for Ian. Now, if we look at Ian's stats, we'll see he has quite a lot of fantastic crit. So a couple heroes that will work with that are Maximus and Timon. So Maximus, with his purple skill, if he is able to study Ian, he's going to be taking 85% less damage from him. Also, just the sheer fact that his red skill makes it so that allies get 80% of their basic damage as reality is also kind of cool. And also he gives the frontmost ally 3 stacks of hardy, which is going to prevent you from getting blinded from Ian. So Maximus, kind of surprisingly, could be a pretty decent counter for Ian. And then Timon is going to be another great counter because of Hakuna Matata with the purple skill is able to give immunity to all crits. So Ian won't be critting you as long as Timon and Pumbaa's Hakuna Matata is off. So Ian's just not going to quite be doing as much damage to you. So another decent counter for Ian is going to be Lock, Shock, and Barrel. This one, kind of for a specific reason, is the white skill, which is going to be able to just completely catch him and put Ian in a bag, potentially. Especially if you don't play on auto. You'll be able to literally just pick Ian and he'll just be completely useless for 15 seconds. Another reason is the stacks of fatigue that he could potentially be giving to Ian. So what fatigue does is it's going to prevent the enemy from giving themselves a buff. So the buff that Ian gives himself is hardy with his red skill. You could potentially be wearing him down by giving Ian fatigue. Fatigue is kind of a new ability that I think was introduced with Lock, Shock, and Barrel actually, but there's been a few others that came out with him. Disgust also has that, so there's another reason that Disgust is a pretty good counter for Ian. Mim also has fatigue when she goes into her Tiger ability, so that's a pretty decent counter. I'm just going to go right into Mim because I wanted to talk about her as well. I know she just got a rework, everyone's giving her a bunch of crap for it, but I think her Hex ability that she now has is going to be a pretty good counter for Ian and say Mulan and things like that, because it's going to stun them if they use their white skills while they are hexed. So instead of Ian destroying your entire life with his white skill, he's just going to be hexed and stunned for 10 seconds. So that's a pretty decent counter. The only downside with Mim is that Ian would have to have been the last one to use his white skill in order to be hexed, or you would have to wait for Ian to kill one of your teammates. So that's kind of a downside, but say Ian starts the wave with 250 energy, he'll be hexed instantly. So that's a possibility if you want to think of some combos with that, because there's definitely some possibility with that. But the hex ability, it's going to stop him from using his white skill and he'll be stunned instead. The other hero that has Hex, which I know no one really uses very much, but Ursula also has Hex. She's the original Hexer. She applies Hex to all enemies for 5 seconds with her white skill. And also, depending on what the enemy team has with the Ian, the Hex could be increased with Ursula. So I think Ursula overall is going to have the more reliable Hex for you. But no one really uses Ursula. I think she might be underrated, but I honestly have never used her before, ever. So I really have no idea how good she is, to be honest. But the Hex ability is a pretty good counter for Ian, I think. Joy or Rapunzel or anybody else that gives some kind of reality boost is going to be a pretty good counter for Ian, just because of you'll be getting less damage from Ian. And the last one I wanted to kind of mention was Sap will be a pretty good counter for Ian, just because he won't be able to get off his white skill as much while he's being sapped. Donnie over here is going to be a pretty decent counter as well, because he's going to be able to absorb 3 debuffs that he receives. So the blind that Ian gives off, he's going to be able to absorb and then just reflect right back at him, basically. So that's something. It's not the hugest counter, but it's definitely a thing. And the last one I wanted to talk about is going to be Fear. So Fear is going to be a pretty decent counter because of his purple skill is able to reduce the amount of crit damage that you're going to receive. And like I said before, Ian has pretty high fantastic crit, so any reduction in damage you can get is great. I think that's about all I wanted to talk about as far as counters. I hope that's a pretty decent list for you guys. It's pretty tough to counter Ian, but it's definitely doable. I think the number one counter for Ian is basically just silence. So that's going to be Angel, Disgust, Tia, Sadness, etc. I think overall, I think Sadness and Disgust might be the best two counters for Ian out there. I think Mim and Ursula with their Hex ability is a pretty good one, although both of those heroes are relatively weak, so it might be kind of risky to try that. And I think Sap is probably the other big one, just to prevent him from being able to use his white skill quite as much. So that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. I hope this kind of helped you guys out. If you want to see more of these hero overviews, definitely consider commenting and subscribing and all that. I have a Twitter now. So if you want to see, I'm going to be doing things like polls and questions and stuff like that. So if you want to be a part of the more interactive kind of stuff, definitely give my Twitter a follow. That's pretty much all I got for you guys. Peace.
That's the Manticore?
Behold!
Oh, that's the children's menu.